What's up, YouTube? It's Zach here. I'm coming at you guys with another gear review. Basically, today we're going to be going over the Mora series of knives, and I know that this has just been beaten to death, so I'll try to be as quick as possible. I just know that a lot of people like Moras, and I'll go over some of the specs for some of these knives. These are just two of the specific knives that I have. I have another Mora that I don't have on the table. I may do a separate review for that one, just because that one's a little bit more robust. I guess, it's a joke because it's the more robust. But anyways, I'll be doing the review today on these two particular Moras, and I'll be kind of going over some of the specs. I won't be really getting into the argument for which one is better. I think that they both fill a necessary need or role. So if you're looking for that, you're probably not going to find it here. I may end up doing it, but I'll try to avoid that as much as possible because I really honestly, there's so many opinions for either one of which one's better and which one's not. It can go back and forth, and we would spend all day sitting around. I will tell you what the likes and dislikes of the specific knives and the manufacturing processes of the knives that I really like. So we'll kind of dabble in those. But for now, I'll go ahead and get going on these. Both these knives are really awesome. This is my Mora 511 that I have. I really like this knife. It's pretty awesome. I custom made the sheath for myself and just for the role that I wanted it to fit. It's a friction fit sheath that goes around the neck. It's nothing fancy, but it does the job. It does the trick that I want it to do. And here's the actual knife itself. It's pretty awesome. It's a nice little knife. I've had this knife for around 6 years, and I've been using it on and off of those 6 years, and every time I use it, I really, really, really like it. This particular knife is the Mora 511. It's the younger brother to the Mora 510. I don't have a version of the 510. I think that by the time I wanted to get the knife, the 510 had been phased out, and the 511s were the ones that were being pushed. I don't honestly care that it had like the little crook. I just didn't like it, so I just cut it off. And I felt like the finger guard was just oversized, and I'm not really sure why Mora decided to phase out the old 510s and go with the 511s. I don't know. I haven't really done enough research to really figure that out. If you guys know, if you guys want to let me know or make a comment at the bottom, that's fine. I just am honestly just giving my personal viewpoint of the 511. I think it's a good knife. I think that they could have reduced the finger control a little bit more to better compensate for the handle of the knife. I really like the way that it feels in my hand. I have pretty large hands, so I can fit all of my fingers on this knife and then some probably onto this knife, and it feels good. And the shape of the knife is really where I feel like it excels. It has a slight taper at the top, so you can get your thumb in there to do chest lever cuts or whatever you need to be done. And I really just feel like this knife is awesome. This is the first knife I got, and this is what kind of got me into the whole Mora fad. I didn't want to buy into the Mora hype that came out of the whole situation, but these knives really are amazing knives, and I really just can't say enough good about this knife particularly, other than the fact that just Mora gets it right, and the fact that this knife is so cheap. I think online you can get these for right around the $10 mark. You're not going to be spending copious amounts of money. It's not like you're spending $30, $40 on this knife, and it still does the cutting task that you need it to do. And if you damage it, lose it, ruin the knife in any way, you just chuck it in the trash and you buy another one. And I think that's really awesome. That's a valuable thing. It's a valuable thing to keep in mind with knives, especially knives that you use all the time for utility purposes. You have to know that eventually your knife is going to give out on you, and you want to be able to replace that knife for very little. So anyways, that being said, the overall length of this knife is actually it's 8.25 inches in length, which is fine. It works for me. I think it fills that utilitarian task very well, and I think that it's a very generic, good size knife. The overall blade length on it is actually 3.75 inches, and it's made of 1095 carbon steel. The 1095 carbon steel does have a tendency to rust. It doesn't have a very high rust resistance, so it is more prone to being susceptible to rust or patina if you use it for a lot of cutting tasks. If you're cutting a lot of vegetables or doing food prep with it, it will change colors, which is fine. It gets a patina on it, and the patina is just an oxidized coating that gets onto the blade. Not a big deal. If it is a big deal for you, they sell this exact knife in a stainless steel, a Sandvik. I think it's a 12C27 Sandvik steel. That would be more preferable to the carbon steel if you're really worried about it rusting. And I mean, really, if you're looking for just a downright dirty knife to get the job done, this is a great knife to have. And I feel like this is a vast improvement over the wooden handled or the birchwood handle classic number 2s. I feel that the blade on those number 2s is exposed, and it just runs the risk of you either cutting your finger, and on top of that, it's not impervious to the wet environments or moisture or snow or whatever you're going to find out there if you're taking it out on hikes or using it in the outdoors. This kind of handle will be less. It'll take more of a beating, and you don't have to worry about replacing it in the field. The birchwood handle, you could run the potential possibility of breaking it or ruining it, and having to replace it either in the field or buying a new knife or whatever. I've seen some guys who make their own, the handle falls off and they just make a new handle, and that's great. That's fine. If you're really into that, that's good for you. I personally, if my handle fell off my knife, I would try to make a new one, but I don't have to worry about it so much on this one because this high resin plastic, which takes a beating quite well. I think I said that before. I've actually used the pommel of this knife to crush nuts. I used it once to push a tent stake into the ground, hammering on it, and it really hasn't shown any wear or tear on it, and you kind of get a good look at the knife. And I mean, I've actually so I've used this knife quite a bit. You can see that it's actually got a lot of wear and tear on the actual blade itself, and I really feel as if the blade it has patinaed before on me, and I've actually tried oxidizing techniques, and I honestly just really like the satin finish of blades. I just prefer that over having a patina on it. Some guys do some really cool stuff with it, with mustard and other like household items, and put like cool stuff on the blade. I've tried that and dabbled in it and think it's fun, but it just isn't practical, and it doesn't help with the rust resistance of the knife, or at least in my experience, it hasn't helped any in the rust resistance. So that's just one thing, and that's the 511, and then here's the sheath. I made the sheath by hand. And I wetted the sheath, and I covered the knife in a plastic coating, and I actually inserted it in there, and I used tools to kind of rub around the outside, and it kind of gives it a nice like finish, and it fits in the sheath pretty cool, pretty nicely. And I like wearing most of my knives around my neck. It just works for me. It's easier, especially when you're backpacking. You can just kind of get in and out of your, to get your knife in and out of your sheath a lot easier. I feel like you don't have to fumble around with going to your pockets or your bag or whatever. It's just right there, easily accessible. Okay, cool. And then this is my Mora Companion. I actually have a Kydex sheath for this one. I didn't like the sheaths that these came with. I just felt like they didn't. I mean, they're good, but they're not great. And I went ahead and I spent the money and I got a better sheath for this actual knife. That was actually one of those things where it's like, if you like a knife enough, you're gonna get a good sheath, because a knife is only as good as the sheath. Because if you lose the knife because you have a really bad sheath, you're kind of like SOL, and then what? So you gotta have yourself a good sheath. And I honestly don't have the capabilities of making my own Kydex sheaths. If I did, I would. But I just ordered this one off of eBay, and it works really, really good. I can't remember the guy's name that made the knife, but it locks super secure, and I just enjoy this a lot better. And I can slip this around my neck, And the companion that I actually have, it's the orange model, and it's the orange. It has orange handles, and the companion model is the stainless steel version. It's the Mora stainless steel version, and that's really nice because basically when you if you're in a high moisture environment or you have to use it in a wet environment, it's just better to have something that's stainless steel that takes rust resistance a lot better. Or at least in my experience, I've found that I want something that I don't have to maintain all the time. Having like one of these carbon steel Moros with the 1095 carbon can just be sometimes a pain, especially on a long distance trip where you're having to make multiple stops and you're constantly having to clean your gear or having to constantly oil your blade is just a real pain. So the stainless steel, in my opinion, is the way to go as far as Moras. And on top of that, the prices on these two knives, this one was $10 online. This one, I think I got this one for 13 plus shipping and handling, and that's not bad. I got this knife actually to originally use as a kitchen knife, and that was its primary function for a few months, actually as a kitchen knife. And I realized that it did so well at being a kitchen knife that I actually ended up making it part of my permanent knife collection, and it became my favorite go-to knife. And I use this knife every time I go outside. The handles are really nice. I want to say that I'm going to talk a little bit about the tangs here in a bit, but the handle of both these knives is great. I really like the handle on this knife, but I love the handle on this knife because it has this kind of grippy texture on the actual Mora Companion, and that is just really nice. I've used this knife a lot with sweaty hands and in wet environments, and I really just feel like it does hold true to actually being able to grip it and use it really, really well, especially when carving or having to do any kind of task. I go fishing a lot, so I always have a knife on me, and usually I take this knife with me. And then I actually drilled a hole for a lanyard. And I feel like Mora, I don't know why they do this, but I feel like Mora, if they just took 5 minutes to drill a hole into every single knife, it really wouldn't take up that much more time. And I feel like each one of these knives should have a lanyard hole, because if you're gonna have a knife, you should have a lanyard on it. And especially if you're gonna be using it for tasks such as cutting wood or slicing, you should have some sort of cord on it so that way you can actually hold your knife just in case it falls out of your hand. Because you don't want your knife flying through the air at your partner or somebody that you're camping with. It's better to have full control of your knife, and just having that lanyard there to make sure you don't stab yourself on the foot or drop it and damage the knife in any way. It's just so much safer in my opinion. So I feel like Mora if they just took 5 minutes to just tap that hole, it really wouldn't be a big deal. And this is just coming from me, you know. And I mean, if you don't want the hole there, you know, you don't have to drill the hole. But if they just went ahead and tapped it, you have a hole there in case you had that option. And it doesn't really look that bad with the hole there, I feel like. But anyways, I know that most of these knives, especially the 511 Mora, they're throwaway knives. They're actually junk knives. They're knives that weren't meant to last more than a season, and they'd be tossed out and you buy a new one. That's why they're so dirt cheap, or very cheap and very affordable. They're not designed to last forever. But it's really weird because even though they're not designed to last forever, or I can't say they're not designed to last forever, since they're made to be temporary knives, or they're made like they're temporary knives. Even though they're made like that, they also in a way they have just a quality assurance to them. I mean, this might be one of those kind of knives that you pass on to your child, you know, later on in life, and say, yeah, this is the knife that I used all the time, and it'll still look like this, you know, when you give it to them because of its longevity, you know, and the plastic handles and the rubber, you know, it's just they're made to outlast the test of time. And on top of that, you can easily afford, you know, you can easily buy 5, 6, 7 of these and not break the bank. You can spend the money that you would spend on, you know, a $300 knife on Moras and have a whole army of Moras, and do way more cutting with these than you would with that one knife that you bought for $300 or $200 or whatever. So it just, in my opinion, I feel like, you know, if you're going to go backpacking, you need to be lightweight. and these knives are all lightweight. So the ounces actually on this particular knife, it's, let's see, the weight is 2.7 ounces, which is so lightweight. And with the Kydex sheath, I believe it weighs around the 3.8 ounces. I haven't actually weighed it in a long time, but that's what I believe I remember reading online with the other Kydex sheaths and other things. So I think the average weight is around 3.5 total for the full system, and then 2.7 ounces for the actual knife itself, which is so lightweight. If you're thinking about if you're wanting to save ounces for pounds, this is where it's at right here. Save your weight on your knife. And a lot of people give these crap because it's like, oh, this can't be a primary knife. This should be a backup knife. I disagree, because I've used this knife as my primary knife for a very long time, and it's never failed on me. I've never had problems with it. The blade has never failed on me. It takes a razor sharp edge. I mean, razor sharp. I was going to talk a lot about the stick tangs. So Mora, they're really smart because they design these knives that basically the way that the tang comes in to the actual knife, it basically has here. Let me show you. So the way that the knife actually comes in is this middle one. So most production knives come in and they have these squared off angles. K-bar has these squared off angles, and a lot of K-bars break because these squared off angles don't provide any kind of resistance when you're hammering down on the knife or using it for a utility purpose. Mora's knives are usually shaped like this. They have this kind of funky angle grind kind of triangle thing going up into the actual stick tang of the knife, and then most traditionally made hand knives that are made, in Scandinavian kind of grind knives, they have this nice swooped bevel at the bottom of the entire knife, and this right here and on this gives it that added protection against when you're using it for utilitarian purposes. If you didn't have that and you just had this straight tang, you risk actually fracturing. This becomes the weak point of the knife, and a lot of the times this is where the knife breaks. So in my experience, I've yet to break one of these knives at all, and I feel as if, the tang comes down enough. I think it's a 3/4 tang. It comes down far enough for me that I would trust it to do these utilitarian purpose tasks. And I mean, really, it excels. And if I do break it, I'll buy a new one. And a lot of guys can argue that if it breaks in the middle of a survival situation, sure, but you can always improvise a handle or whatever you need to do, to survive that whole disaster. I mean, really, if you're using your knife to that extreme level, you should be more cautious, really, and know the limitations of your knife, and usually always carry a backup, or at least in my opinion. But anyways, with that being said, I really like the Mora Companions. I feel as if I had to choose out of these two knives which one to take on any adventure, it's always going to be the stainless steel Sandvik version of the Mora Companion. And this version is great. I feel like this is great for backyard or backyard activities. If you're wanting to carve on some wood, or if you just want to go out and have some fun and or take it camping. A camping knife. This would be a perfect camping knife. And the stainless steel versions of this knife too would be a vast improvement. And I know that the 1095. Obviously, I said what I said earlier about it being. It has the potential to have rust problems. The Sandvik doesn't. That razor steel, that 12C27, is just absolutely perfect. And I mean, really, a razor sharp knife. I've put the hurt on my blade. You can kind of see. I've really bashed this blade a lot. And I mean, I've actually taken this knife to the point where it was dull, or I could run my finger up and down the knife, and it would not cut me. And I sharpened it, and stropped it, and it was just, I mean, now it's just razor sharp again, so it's one of those knives where, I mean, really, really dependable knife. Would highly recommend buying one of these knives if you don't already own one. Or if you're a fan and you enjoy hearing what I have to say, that's great too. I'm going to try to do more reviews in the future over things that I actually already own, because I feel as if I see way too many reviews out there where people buy brand new knives and they haven't really used them, or the brand new gear and they haven't really used it, and they don't really test it fully to its max potential. I know there's a lot of guys out there that are already doing that, and I just want to be one of those kind of guys that add to that list of videos that you end up watching before you buy your piece of gear, and knowing that it's absolutely solid, it's bomb proof, it's not going to fail on you, or if it does, if it has any weaknesses, it should be shown. So hopefully in the future you'll see more reviews like that. Thank you so much for bearing through this grueling Mora video, and hopefully you guys enjoy more of what I have to bring in the future. All right, well, you guys have a good one, and don't cut yourselves out there.